In India in the 17th century, a weapons system that combined firepower with mobility caused havoc on the field of battle. The elephant, weighing 5 tons and capable of moving over rough terrain at 20 miles per hour, was conscripted for active service. It was mounted with a platform carrying heavy cannon, fired by specialist gunners.
The ancients understood what a tank was long before they had the ability to make anything that we would recognize as a tank.
Today, tanks combine tremendous mobility with the destructive capability of 125mm guns, mounted in rotating turrets. But is it possible that the ancients used the same principles and technologies on the lost battlefields of history?
Throughout history, we get lots of stories about elephants and their use. But in a document from 1616, we get a really exciting, intriguing eyewitness account of elephants being used in an unusual way.
In 1616, a British traveller called Edward Terry reported seeing Indian war elephants armed with heavy guns, 6 foot long and mounted on wooden frames.
He states that Akbar, the Mughal king, was using cannon on elephant back. That turns an elephant from a mobile fighting platform and a beast of war, much as a stallion or a battle charger might be, to an animal-powered equivalent to the battle tank.
There is some evidence that elephants were used in battle in India as long ago as 1100 BC. Initially, their chief function was to give commanders a better view of what was happening on the field.
This is where the Indian kings would have stood in battle. They would have been up on top of the elephant, surveying the battlefield, commanding the position, flying their flags. This is a very powerful way of presenting yourself on the battlefield.
Commanders soon realized that elephants could also be used in the front line. Massed in hundreds, they charged down on the enemy. The air was filled with dust and the deafening sound of their trumpeting. The ground trembling beneath their feet, elephants were a truly terrifying sight.
The elephants themselves were trained to pick up horses and riders in their trunks and dash them to the ground, to their ruin. They also had their tusks sawn off and fitted with tusk swords, and one such looks like this. This fits on the sawn-off end of the tusk, so that instead of the natural end of the tusk, you have this double-curved blade with a huge, fat, armour-piercing point at the end, which would make a fearsome square wound in anything it hit.
Their function on the battlefield was to smash through the enemy general's lines and wreak havoc on his order of battle.
They will break the enemy's formation. They will cause chaos in the enemy's front ranks. They will give you an opportunity to cross the ground, to attack the enemy hand to hand on your terms.
Sometimes elephants carried archers. Such specialist bowmen required years of practice, not to mention a fine sense of balance. But the discovery of gunpowder changed the strategy and tactics of elephant warfare. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, the Indian subcontinent was dominated by one of the greatest states in history, the Mughal Empire, ruled by the Emperor Akbar.
Akbar was the third of a highly successful series of Mughal rulers of India. He was around in the 16th century. He was known as a great military innovator. He was driving for technological advantage over his enemies in an effort to hold sway over the vast part of the Indian subcontinent.
The British traveller to India, Edward Terry, is specific about the weapon he saw on the elephant's back.
This is a conjectural reconstruction of what Terry describes. First, he uses the word gun.
Mounting a cannon on its back would transform the way an elephant was used in combat. Each animal would become a mobile artillery unit. The gunner would have a 6-foot height advantage, giving him enhanced range and visibility. Experimental archaeologist John Naylor has arrived in the jungles of Southeast Asia to investigate the advantages and disadvantages of this ancient tank. But before mounting a weapon on the beast, there were other problems to be solved. John is investigating each one in turn.
That's it.
The first problem was weight. At the time, heavy cast bronze cannon were in general use. the elephant cannon demanded iron, which was 20% lighter than bronze.
This is much lighter than a bronze or brass piece, coming in at about 400 pounds.
The second problem was the difficulty of reloading. Most guns in the 17th century were muzzle loaders. The gunner had to walk round to the front and shove the powder, wadding and missile down the front of the barrel.
Obviously, if you're balanced on an elephant, you can't walk round to the front to ram the charge home and load it.
Cannon forged of iron and not cast in bronze can be constructed with a rear opening called the breech. The missile and the gunpowder are packed into a separate cylinder, effectively a giant bullet. This is slotted into the breech, which means you can load the cannon from the back rather than the front. The final problem to be solved before mounting the gun is to work out how to aim it. Elephants can't turn on a sixpence, so to be effective, the gunner would have to aim the gun without changing the direction of the elephant, exactly like the revolving turret on a modern tank.
The key to how you aim these is in the swivel and the pintle. Just by having it being able to turn left to right, to pan, and to tilt on this point of balance means you've got lots of flexibility in aiming.
But to find out how to aim the elephant cannon in practice, John must mount up. From his lofty position as an ancient elephant gunner, John now appreciates the tactical advantage of this ancient tank.
The first thing that's amazing about this is the field of view. I can see for hundreds of yards all around. So for a commander, this is excellent as a command point to actually see the whole layout of the battlefield. This is an awesome weapons platform.
To test the targeting accuracy, John has modified his replica cannon to fire paintball rounds. Real explosives and real iron cannonballs cannot be used, in case they endanger the elephant or John himself. Practice targets have been laid in a clearing on the edge of the jungle, exactly the same terrain that the commanders of old preferred.
Here we go. Yes, that's dead. It's a real learning curve. It's working out the movement of the elephant, the movement of the gun, and the movement of the target in relation to both.
John has discovered the knack of the ancient aiming technique.
I ended up more like a naval gunner, learning to wait for the point where the gait of the elephant is in line with the target. As a weapon system, I think we've shown that it would have worked, especially against packed infantry. You add in bows and other weapons in there, grenades and all the rest of it, armour everybody up. This thing would have been devastating.
Over the centuries, weapons became more powerful, armour became more sophisticated, and elephants themselves developed through selective breeding and training.